All right, let's see. Do we have sound now? Hello, hello. Okay, I didn't have my microphone turned on. I knew something was going to go wrong. And Steve the cat is coming to visit here. So let me put Steve down. Does everybody have the sound now? Hooray! Okay. Welcome to my coloring studio. I am back on YouTube after several years off. I'm trying to do free education for people. So let's see. Do we have sound now? Let's see, there's a delay there. There we go. Hopefully this works. I knew there was going to be some bubbles. All right, so I'm trying to do a monthly series here. I've been trying to work on this course for like years now, and I just can't seem to get the course completed. And then I come up with a new idea and I get sidetracked. So we are working on alcohol markers. I am doing it live. This is kind of like stream of consciousness going on here. I don't have a script. I just have points that I want to cover. Today is the first color. We're covering yellow. So I'm going to work through my thought processes and the actual color selection processes that I go through when I'm picking yellow blending combinations for something like our daffodil here. So this week in today's video, we are going to pick the colors for a project similar to the daffodil. And then next week, we're going to use the colors that you've chosen to color the daffodil. All right, so I've got some things to go with the videos here. So link in the description, there is a color theory kit. And it's for spring 2023. Like I said, I'm trying to go economical. So the spring 2023 kit actually covers 3 months. It's going to cover March, April, and May. And it's going to give you 3 digital stamps. So we've got the daffodil, and then the lily of the valley, and then dogwood. And there are worksheets for all 3 colors. The daffodil covers yellow, lily of the valley is going to be green, and then dogwood is pink. We have a color wheel, which I kind of worked on this past week. It is specific for Copic markers. It's got the Copic marker numbers on it, but you could also use it with other marker brands. You just can't use the same numbering system. And I have a full color version that you can print out. That's in the kit. And then also a blank one. I don't want to waste time coloring my own color wheel. So I think the only reason why I would personally color the color wheel is if my printer wasn't giving me a very good copy of it. But I know some of you like to do that. Copics are not light fast, so that means if you do color it, you might have to color another one again in a year, just as long as you're aware of that. So there's the kit. And then also over on Sketch Garden, which is where I do digital stamps, I have a daffodil image. So you can take what you've learned here in the March series of videos and apply it to Dillodaff. And yes, the live stream is being recorded and it will be housed on my YouTube channel. It'll be available anytime you want. I have no plans to ever take it down, so it might just be something that my great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren finally take down. It'll be up there for a while and you can color it and watch as many times as you want. And the kit will stay available indefinitely as well. Links are down in the description. Okay, today I am using Copic markers. I'm a Copic marker instructor, so of course I'm going to use Copic markers. And I've kind of pulled my marker set over. It's just right off camera right here. Normally it's up against the wall, but I've pulled it closer so that you can watch me pulling colors and testing, because that's what today is all about. So I am using Copic markers, but the process that we're going through today works for a wide variety of mediums. So you could use another brand of alcohol marker. It really helps if you're using an artist grade alcohol marker, and it helps if they have a very large color selection, because Copic makes 358 colors, but they don't make that many really nice yellows, and I know that other brands are similar. So it helps if you've got a wide variety there. So you don't have to use you don't have to use Copic markers. You can use any alcohol marker, but this same color theory also works for Crayola markers. It works for colored pencils, and I use it all the time for colored pencils. It works for watercolor. I treat Copic markers. My Copic marker technique is exactly what I do with watercolor. It's basically watercolor in stick format. So the color theory that we're learning works for a wide variety of mediums. It'll work for oil paint, it'll work for acrylic, it'll work for pastel, it'll work for Conte crayons. It's color theory, it's universal. So don't worry, if you're not a Copic person, you can still get something. Today we are swatching, and we're swatching to try and get some yellows to work on that daffodil project. Next week, then, we're going to use those markers. We're going to apply what we've learned in a coloring session. So that's when you want the digital stamp. And remember, your markers that you select today might be different than mine, because maybe I'm going to use Y02 and you don't own Y02. So you're going to search for something that's very similar, and then next week you're going to use your color selection, because that's ultimately the goal here. I don't want you to use my marker recipe, because my marker recipe reflects my taste and my preferences. My marker recipe is my art, basically. If you're using my marker recipe, you're not really coloring in your own voice. So we may have colors similar, we may have colors in common, but I want you to use the colors that you find today. I want to give you that ability to fly out of the nest and pick colors on your own instead of relying on what somebody else has told you to do. All right, so for those of you that are absolutely new to me, my name is Amy Shulke. I have been a technical illustrator for about 30 years. I am now, for the last decade, I've been doing instruction. I picked up my first alcohol marker in 1989, the fall of 1989. It was for a marker class at art school. So I've been using different brands throughout the years. I actually started with design markers. That was back before Copics had even been invented. So I've been using markers for a really long time. And as a result, not going to lie to you, as I'm picking colors today, because I've got all that experience under my belt, I kind of know what I'm going for. I know what I like. I've done it several times before, but I'm still trying to go into this with a blank slate. I'm going to try some colors that I think might not work, and maybe I might be proven wrong. I might find a new blending combination today that I've never used before. And that's kind of the joy of art, is that we are expanding our range of the colors that we use, and we're being experimental. So again, you don't have to use the same colors I'm using. I might not be using the same colors that I originally used to color the sample here. And this was just me doodling around here. I didn't know at the time that I drew this and colored it that it was going to be part of this course, but it just kind of worked out perfectly. Yay! Okay, so good illustration, good coloring, it always starts with a photo reference. And I wanted to make this as economical as possible, so there's a link down in the description below that is going to give you a link to pixabay.com, which is a free photo website, and that's where I got this daffodil. So you can download the original photo reference and work with it yourself at home. Now I also have the photo reference on the worksheet here, and this I'm just like covering my bases, making sure. If you have a choice, I would use the digital version rather than, my directions are all screwed up. There we go. Rather than the worksheet there. I'm left-handed. The world is backwards to me. Okay, so if you have a choice, I would use the digital photo rather than the printed worksheet, because your printer is different than my printer, and that's different than somebody else's printer. They all have slightly different color variations to it. So you're going to get the truest color if you download the digital version. The worksheet is there just in case, like maybe some of you are on vacation, or you're doing this at work on your lunch hour or something. It's the portable version, but ideally you want to be working with a photo reference. Now, if I'm teaching a drawing class, I'm going to buy some daffodils, I'm going to put them in a vase, and I'm going to have students draw directly from that. But that's really hard in this kind of format because, first of all, the daffodil that you have today is going to be dead by next week when we go to color it. So, you know, flowers, they don't last, and as they age, they change color. And then the other thing is that the light changes color. So I'm in a studio here. I have 2 lights directly up ahead that are lighting my work surface. And then I have a bank of lights that run through the center of this kind of attic A-shaped room. So there's a bank of lights up there. I've got a window over there. And the light coming in from the window is totally different than the lights everywhere else. They stay the same all the time. But at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting light directly in my window. By 11 o'clock, I'm not getting any light directly through the window. And as the sun rises, the color on the daffodil changes. The photo reference stays the same 100% of the time. And so that's why we will be working with photo references here. But if I were to teach this same thing in person, you'd be holding an actual daffodil right now. I'm trying to find photo references that have some pretty good color to them. So as we go month by month, we're just going to explore different colors, but we're always going to use that free photo reference from pixabay.com. So there you go. All right, so link down below in the description, download it because you're going to be using it. And right now I'm going to show you exactly how I use it. So right here, cat hair and everything is my tablet. So I'm opening up my tablet here, and I've pulled up the photo reference, and I need to angle it because one of my studio lights is kind of like shining funny off of it, and the color looks a little bit washed out because the camera is actually capturing something digital. So don't use the reference that I have right here, use that one over there. All right, so the very first thing that I do for every project that I do, whether it's a class project, whether I'm coloring for fun, whether I'm doing freelance work, is I always find photo references and then I pull them up on my tablet because my tablet allows me to zoom in on the different features. And I spend time with my main color photo reference. So I might draw one daffodil, but I'm using a different photo for a better color suggestion. So I pull up my color selection photo and I just start doing this color tour here. I am wandering through and I'm making observations. The color is getting a little darker here. What is that? Okay, so that's the side of the trumpet. So every daffodil has those 6 petals around the outside, and then there's this trumpet in the center. And when I zoom in on the trumpet, it looks like the color is going from a light yellow all the way over here to a dark yellow. I'm just taking the color tour. And what I don't want you to do when you're taking the color tour is to think the word daffodil. Because the human brain likes to take shortcuts. So if I say, hey class, we're coloring a daffodil, everybody is going to run over to their Copic markers and you're going to pull out your Y markers. Well, I didn't tell you that we were coloring a yellow daffodil. You just assume that. We take those mental shortcuts. That's why we can have conversations with people and you don't sound like an idiot, because your brain is making tons and tons of shortcuts all the time. Well, what if I said, hey class, we're coloring elephants, and you run over to your markers and you grab all the gray markers that you own, and this is our photo reference. You got the wrong markers. You've pulled the wrong colors. So when I am taking my little color tour here, I'm not thinking daffodil, because daffodil is going to convince me that I'm looking at yellow. Instead, I am observing color as it actually is, not what I expect. And that's a big key to art, is that you cannot color what you expect to see and have that make sense to other people. You need to color the color that's actually there. So if I see yellow, that gives me permission then to use those Y markers, but not until I see yellow. And now we have Strudel the cat here for a visit. Let me get rid of Strudel. I didn't realize when I scheduled these live streams that it was right at petting time. And so they just kind of like all came and found me. 2 cats, but lots of fur. All right, so the next thing that I'd notice about the photo reference is the background. And let me pull up that little digital one as well. The background here is very dark. This is not a daffodil that is sitting on a white background. The dark background changes how we see the yellow. It adds hints and flavor to the yellow that we see there. So the background here it's a deep gray green, and in places I see kind of almost a blue color. Can I see that blue off to the side there in my digital? Yeah, right up there. Whoop. So it's kind of a gray green with hints of blue, and that color is affecting the daffodil. So look at right down here. Look at how green that looks. What's happening there is that we've got color from the background that is affecting the yellow, and it's changing the color that we perceive because light rays bounce around, and we've got some green light that is kind of casting some darkness over there onto the yellow. If I'm coloring a daffodil on a white background, I can't be using this photo reference because then I'm coloring the wrong kind of yellow on a white background. So you have to make accommodations. You have to be careful which photo references you use. Next week we're going to color with a dark background because I kind of like what's going on here. And you can expect me to pull out some green pencils to give this area, when we color it, a nice little green flavor to it. It's going to be just really nice. You will like it. All right, so you have to take note of the color that you see and not diagnose it. You have to kind of pay attention to what's in the background. And then the last thing about your color tour is don't you dare think the word orange, because years and years and years of Copic tutorials have taught you that here's my yellow daffodil and here's where I use an orange marker to shade it. Well, folks, I got news for you. Dark yellow is not orange. Orange is a totally different hue. It's not part of the yellow family. That's why it's a YR marker and not a Y marker. As soon as you think orange, then you grab those YR markers and you start coloring orange on your daffodil. And then somebody walks by your daffodil, like your husband or one of your kids, and they say, oh, that is just the cutest little orange daffodil. And you're wondering, wait a minute, I'm using 5 yellow markers, 1 orange, but 5 yellow markers, why are they calling it orange? Because orange is a bully of a color. It dominates when you add it to your project. So as soon as you introduce orange as your darkest yellow, our brains, as a viewer, we're all looking at that and we're saying, oh, it's an orange daffodil with light yellow areas to it. It immediately shifts the color in our head. You have to color the color that we see. So what color is it? Well, that's where we go digital. So you probably have a phone. I'm going to fold up my iPad here for a second. You have a phone, and the phone has an app, and on that app, you can find an app that gives you a color picking ability, so like a color app. But personally, I use Illustrator because that's what I do during the day. 90% of the time, I've got Illustrator open on my desk. So I'm going to use the Eyedropper tool in Illustrator. But there are lots of different apps. If you have a good one, go ahead and share that in the comments over there. Because like I said, I'm not an expert on these apps. I use Illustrator, so that's what I'm going to do today. That's what I'm familiar with. So I have our photo reference pulled up here, and you see that white circle there. So you see, let's see, get my stuff working here. You see the white circle here, and I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to sample some of the colors. So here's my little eyedropper tool, and we're going to start diagnosing the color that we see going on in this photo reference, because chances are most of you are looking at this color right here and you're thinking that it is, I gotta move my comments out of the way, you're thinking that it's probably that color, right? Copic has kind of taught you to expect to see orange in the shade, and probably like right in there, that's kind of what you're thinking about right there. But is that really the color? Well, Let's find out. Let me get my eyedropper tool and let's sample the color there. Does that look orange to you? Nope. Again, this right here is the color that we expect to see, but this is the color that's actually down there in the shade. It's not what you've been taught to expect to see. So I'm just going to put that orange up there to remind you that that is not what we were looking for. I am going to run the eyedropper tool right along the side of this trumpet because to me this is a really nice gradient here of yellow to shade. And let's just look at the colors that we find there. Okay, so right up here I'm getting a nice clean yellow. That's an excellent color to start shopping for. And then let's try and find, like, there's like a little stripe here of darkness. Let's see what's there. Well, it's not too much darker. How about down here? What's there? Ooh, now that is kind of a mustardy color. I don't really have names for a lot of these yellow colors. I can tell you 500 shades of blue, but yellow I don't have a good vocabulary for. Let's try over here. Now see, we're starting to get into this weird color. And now we're getting down there. And it really almost looks chocolate brown right there. Down here, see that area that I told you that had some green to it? Look at how green the yellow is there. Would you have ever picked a Copic marker for that green area? I'll be honest, I probably wouldn't have. All right, so let's come up here. I think we're going to shoot for those 4 colors on the worksheet. So you pull up that daffodil worksheet, and I'm going to try and look for this color and something like that color, and then this one and this one. Probably that one. Yeah. Okay, so let me switch back. There we go. Get my thing out of the way. Today, I am swatching on Cryogen Curious White. It's 89-pound cardstock. There it is. Cryogen 89-pound Curious White. And it's called Curious Metallic because there's a slight sparkle to it. I don't know if the camera is really... There it is. See how the camera's kind of picturing that sparkle? I'm not a glitter girl, but I don't mind the sparkle too much. But this is really good paper. I love coloring on this because it takes markers well, but it also takes colored pencil well. And that is what I will be coloring next week's project sample on. So this one right here is going to be colored onto Cryogen. If you're a beginner though, I really want you to be working on Express It. Express It blending card self blends, which means that you lay the color down and it starts to blend for you. And here's the rule about swatching is always swatch, always test on the same project as or the same paper as your project is going to be. So if you're going to be coloring our final daffodil here onto Cryogen, you're testing on Cryogen. If you're going to be coloring the final one on Express It, you're testing on Express It. And I know that that kills people sometimes because you're looking at the price tag and you're saying, but Express It costs a lot and I'm just testing markers here. Why am I wasting good paper on testing? Well, that's because marker looks different on Cryogen than it does on Express It, than it does on Hammer Mill, than it does on Nina. Every single paper changes the flavor of the color. So it does you no good to test on Staples cardstock and then move to a better paper for your final coloring because you're not getting apples to apples there. You're getting a different color on the paper. And the other thing, and this is really key, is that markers blend differently on different kinds of paper. So on some, you could have a marker that totally takes over and you get a lot of, let's say, Y11 flavor out of the blend, and then that same blend on Express It has a lot of Y15 flavor to it. So you really need to be testing on the paper that you're eventually going to be working on. And that's where just being frugal comes in. What you're looking at here is just a piece of paper that I cut off of. I normally color at 12 by 12, so I end up with these scrap sheets of Cryogen. And sometimes I am testing on a scrap sheet of Cryogen that's like 6 inches long and 2 inches wide. I test on funky pieces of paper. I save every little bit. So there we go. I test on the scrap paper that I've cut off of the margins of my good projects. So always test. Whatever you've got in front of you is the paper that you should be ending up with. All right, so let's pull up that daffodil. And the color that we're shooting for are here on this worksheet. So those are those 4 main colors that we want to go for with our markers. Now that first yellow, I'm just going to start pulling some yellows over here. So there we go. Kind of see my yellow section. Right, I'm thinking as I'm going here, let's just pull out Y04 because that's just the first one that my eyes landed on. And I'm just giving myself a little test. And then I'm holding it over to my sample and I'm saying, not really. And you can hold it over to the worksheet. What I've got here is a marker Y04 that starts with a 0. So it's Y0, and that's a problem because in the Y family, all of the markers that start with a 0, they have a glowing agent added to them. They almost look like a highlighter, like a Avery, children's highlighter, a school highlighter. And as I'm sitting here, this color is starting to glow and glow and glow. So you know to call the ambulance if Amy's coloring with a Y0 anything, because I just don't like the highlighter look. I tried Y04. First of all, it's too light. Second of all, I don't like the glow, so I am not using that. Just to be sure and cover our bases, let's try a Y06. And here's where I get myself into trouble personally at home because I forget to label things. So this was a Y04 and this was a Y06. And when I'm sampling and swatching for projects all the time, I cannot tell you how many times it happens. I've got like 12 yellows sitting here and I don't know what any of them are because I didn't label them. So label as you go. Look at how much that glows. Yeah, Amy is not working with the Y0s. Not happening, folks. All right, so that was a Y06. Let's find something of a similar strength, so something that ends in close to a 6. Let's move to the teens. So this is a Y15. Now you kind of have to wait for that color to dry a little bit before you see the end color. And I kind of like that. That is feeling very similar to that photo reference. I'm going to hold this as a candidate. So I'm holding on to that Y15. Just to cover my bases, let's pull out the Y13. Oh yeah, I can already tell. I want these 2 markers in my pool of possible colors. So this one was Y15 and this one was Y13. Let's go to the next family. So we got those Y20s and we want something that's in that mid-range, the 5 to 6 range. So let's do a Y26. Holy cow, that is the wrong color. Not going to work, but it might work for one of those darker colors in the blend there. Might work. The Y30s are next on our shopping list. And honestly, I would camp out overnight to be the first person to buy the next Y marker that Copic makes because they don't make enough yellows for me. I'm always settling for something that's like second best. That is too orange to me. Especially as it starts to dry, it's going to feel less yellow and have a little bit more of that golden flavor to it. Yeah, I'm not loving that. So Y30s are a strikeout. And that's the end of our yellow samples. Now, if I'm doing something that's blue, I could have a whole sheet of swatches here just trying to find something that kind of works. This is going to feel so good. Crossing that out, crossing that out. Get rid of those zeros. Crossing this one out. So I wish Copic made more Ys so that I had something more to choose from than the slightly mustardy feel and then these yellows here. But I really do think, and honestly, I kind of knew that that's where we were going because there's so few to remember here. So I do think that we're going to be working with that Y-teen family. Now, I want to sample the Y11 just to see what that looks like. Cover all my bases so that I know how light the Y11 is going to be. And I have to wait. There's that little bit of drying time that the paper starts to lighten and brighten as that ink dries. Yeah, I think I'm going to keep that Y11 here. I think I'm going to hold on to all three of these markers. So Y11, Y13, and Y15. Now I got that funky 26 here. And if I were doing standard Copic blending, because this is what a lot of people do, and I'm not, you know, it's a good way to teach beginners, and a lot of instructors teach this way, where this is a blending combination. So we put down our Y11, and we put down our Y13 next to it, and we put down our Y15, and then we put down our Y26, and then blending is all about covering those edges and making the edges look like they blend. Well, I don't work that way. I start dark and I overpaint everything. Is that Y26 going to cause me problems? Well, first of all, I'm not even sure that that's the right color. And the more it dries, it does not look like that kind of weird Dijon custard or Dijon mustard color. It's not even the right, no, it's dried much lighter. As a matter of fact, that Y35 looks more like it. But there's an easier way to do this. Instead of standing here and debating over the whole thing, should I use it, should I not use it, we can just use color theory here. So we are how many minutes into this? We're half an hour in before we have touched a color wheel. I know, if you look up color theory on the internet, they're going to shove a color wheel in your face, and then they're going to spend 10 minutes talking about primaries and secondaries and split complements and tertiary blends, and you don't need all of that. We're just using this as a general reference. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find Y13 on the color wheel. Now it just so happens that Y13 was on the color wheel. That's the primary yellow. So but Y15 is not on the color wheel. I just know that the Y15 is kind of in this space over here. So if you're sitting there right now with a Y21 in your hand and you're like, well, I can't use this color wheel because Y21 is not on the list, you just know it's kind of in here somewhere. All we want to know is the color that is directly across the color wheel. So here's yellow. We go all the way across to find the complement. And that's the violet family. And I've given you the little dot right there. So anytime you are using a yellow marker, when we go to underpaint, which is how I make that funky Dijon mustard color, I'm going to be shopping for an underpaint in the violet family. Now I'm not using V17 because V17 is going to be way too strong. But I'm going to be shopping in the same family as a V17. I'm going to be finding something that's one of those violets that's not too purple and not too blue. That's all we're using this color wheel for. I'm just looking up yellow. Okay, I'm shopping in the purple section or the violet section. If I'm working with blue, I'm going to say, hey, I am shopping in the warm red section. If I'm coloring something that's orange, I'm going to say, hey, I'm shopping in the blue section. Now we're done with the color wheel. Because that's so little about color theory. We don't need the wheel to dominate everything we do. We just need a general idea, which is why on that wheel that I threw at the dog, that's why it says hints on there. It's not an exact science. You're just shopping for something in the violet family. So I think I'm going to be using that Y15. Let's go with the Y13 and the Y15. I like that Y11 maybe for the lightest area. So I'm kind of liking that right there. That feels good to me. Now let's come up with that underpaint color that's going to create the Dijon mustard color that we found in, remember this Dijon mustard color? That's what we're looking for. We're going to try and create that. So I'm shopping according to the color wheel. I'm shopping in the violet section, and I'm going to try, I do a lot with V20. I just know from experience, I do a lot with V20. So let's put a little bit of V20 down. And then let's go with the Y15 over the top of it. And see how that's giving us, I don't know if that's Dijon mustard right there. What I'm looking at is this color right in here. That's where I'm trying to make the Dijon mustard that's going to give us when you go around the side of that trumpet of the daffodil. I need that muddy color. Now as this starts to dry, it's going to change. And honestly, I think the best way for a beginner to test is test so that you don't see the violet or the yellow in your test swatch. So I'm doing violet there, that's that V20, and then I'm going to go directly over the top of it. And that way I can see the pure color that's being created, because right here, this color here is kind of influencing my opinion. So I'm going to be watching this as it dries to see if V20, so this is one coat of V20 with Y, was that 13? No, Y15 over the top of it. And I'm just kind of watching to see if that's going to create that Dijon color. Let's pull up that worksheet right there. Am I getting that color? I'm kind of getting that color. And how close is that to the Y26? Huh, we just made Y26, everybody. I didn't expect to do that, but V20 plus Y15 equals Y26. Interesting. All right, so I don't think that's mustardy enough. Let's go deeper. Let's try a V22. So this one was a V20. Let's try the next darker one, V22. There we go. All right, so again, this is how I would do it. There's that V22, and then here's that Y15 going over the top. I'm going to start watching that to see if we're going to develop a mustard color as it dries. And then we do that special test that it doesn't influence you too much, where we don't see any of the yellow or the violet by itself. And we're just going to watch that to see if V22 and Y15. We're going to see if that does it. That's getting closer. See how this is already stronger because we're using more violet. We're desaturating that yellow a little bit more, and I'm kind of liking that. This has potential. I like that. This one's too light, so I'm going to say no to that one. It's kind of wimpy. This one is giving me more the feel that I want. Are there other colors that we can use besides V22? Well, let's try some more. That end number, the 2 right there in V22, that gives us a really good clue. Let's shop for another marker that ends in 2. So there is no VO2, but let's try the VO4 anyway. Just that's the closest that there is. Whoa. I think this is going to overpower the yellow. Yeah, that is pretty bad. So that was VO4 and Y15. Not loving that. Let's try V12. So that's the V12. And then here is the Y15 over the top of it. And it's nice that I've got these side by side because I kind of think that's a candidate. This is definitely no bueno. All right, so I got these side by side. I can kind of watch them and see which one gives me more of that Dijon custard or Dijon mustard. Boy, Dijon custard would be terrible tasting. Dijon mustard. All right, kind of waiting on this to see what's going to happen. Let's see what else there is. How about V9-3? V9-3. That ends in a 3, so it's going to be a little stronger than the 2s, but I think it might work. Let's try this one. Ooh, that's got some gray to it. That's interesting. You have to be sure not to get confused with all these markers sitting out on your desk. So this one was V9-3 with the Y15 over the top of it, and I can already tell that I really don't like that. It's got too much of a like a gray flavor to it. Looks a little bit different on camera than it does in person. You could test that sample if you've got the V93 to work with. Let's try a BV, because the BV is very close to the V family. So let's just throw in a wild card here. Do we have any BVs that end with a 2? Yes, we do. We have BV02, and I'm a little bit skeptical about this because BV02 is darker than it promises to be. See, look at that. Yeah, that is way too dark. And I have the same situation that we have right there. Let's go one lighter. So instead of the BV02, let's do the BV01. And then I'm going to cover it with the Y15. Just testing to see what I can see. Let me get that up on the camera so you can see it. Yeah, there's too much blue in there. It's not turning green, which sometimes will happen when you cover a bluish color with a yellow color. But it does have a gray feeling to it. So yeah, I know that this one was BV02. This was BV01, and I don't like it. I'm going to eliminate this one as well because it's just ugly. Don't like it. So really, for me, it's between these two, and they feel a little different. I don't have a big preference to it, but I know that in my own work, I tend to go for this one because it almost has like an orange feel to it. It's not orange. It is desaturated yellow, but it has a nice flavor to it. And then what I'll do is I'll work some violet into the greens for the leaves. That's typically how I work. I've got less to play with here. There's less of a fun rainbow effect going on. So I really like this one. So this is the one I think I'm going to shoot for. All right, so I've got that V12. I have my Y15. I have a Y13 and a Y11. There we go. Now let's see, now that we've tested to see if it's the right color, let's test these to see if they're going to blend well for us. Because we could come up with 4 of the most perfect colors, but the markers don't get along with each other. They don't want to blend, like maybe one of them is stubborn, or maybe one of them has a lot of solvent in the mixture. That can happen, like Y11 has a lot of solvent, so we have to see what's going to happen when Y11 touches that violet. We have to test and make sure the blend's going to work. So as I'm going to test the same way that I would be if I was coloring a petal. So I'm going to lay down my underpaint first, and that V12 looks very pinkish there. And I'm going to lay down the Y15 over the top of it. And comes the Y13 over the top of the purple, over the top of the Y13. And then the Y11, it goes over the top of the purple, it goes over the top of the 13, it goes over the top of everything. And that is how that blend happens. This is how I don't have to go back and nurse those blends and ease the edges. Just by the order that I lay those colors down, I'm going to get an interesting blend that I don't have to sit there and nurse. I didn't have to fix everything. It looks like a good blend. V12 is what we're seeing right there. Y15 is what we're seeing right there. Y13 and then Y11. And that's a pretty good little blending combination. And I like it there. I can see doing a lot of the inside of the trumpet with that violet underpaint, and then having the outside of the trumpet be more of this range here. And then those outer petals, I can see some Y11 going on there. Really, really nice. I think this is going to set us up nicely for next week. And this is a slightly different combination than I used on this one. So shocking myself right here. Now here's the thing. There is no brown marker in this illustration here. There is only purples and yellows in that. And I'm using the purple and the yellow to develop the shade for the yellow. because that's what I found on the color wheel. That was that suggestion, the complementary color. We call this complementary desaturation is what's going on here. And we're using that purple underneath the yellow to give us that muddy yellow color that indicates shade or depth or dimension for us. That's how we do it with that underpainting method. The underpainting method uses that purple, but you would never know if you hadn't watched me that there was purple underneath there. If I just handed you that swatch and said, what Copic colors did Amy use? You wouldn't know that the underpaint was down there. It's your secret, it's my secret. It's never gonna show, but that's that artistic play that is starting to happen. Now, I happen to know, because I'm gonna pull out my Prismacolors here, the V12 works really nice with some purple pencils. And if I'm shading something like a petal, I can do a little overpainting with, this is Prismacolor 1026 Grade Lavender. I know that's not showing up on camera really well. They label them with metallic, which just annoys me. And then my hands rub the numbers off eventually. But this is PC 1026, and I can guarantee you that I will be using this next week over the top of those markers to add extra desaturation. I'm probably also going to be pulling out a Parma Violet or a Lilac. So let me pull out both of those so you can see what they look like. I've got my envelope of Prismacolors here, and I keep them in that zipper case for when I'm teaching. And here are two other candidates that we might use. There's a nice lilac right here. I should label these for you. So there's lilac. There's that grade lavender. And here is Parma. So let me write these down for you. And let's talk a little bit about the Prismacolors, because I always have somebody tell me, well, why are you using Prismacolors? Because they're not light fast. And I've heard from everybody and their brother that Prismacolors are bad. Prismacolors are probably the best tool that a beginner can start with. They are economically priced, and yet they are some of the best colored pencils out there. For a long time, we only had Prismacolors. Are they light fast? No. But here's the thing. Your Copics that are underneath the Prismacolor are not light fast. So putting a light fast pencil over the top of a not light fast marker, that doesn't help you out any. Prismacolors are soft, so they're very easy for beginners to blend. And I've got to say, there are some really nice colored pencils out there on the market. I have most of them. I own most of them. But nobody to date has the color range that Prismacolor does. They are kind of like the Copic of the colored pencil world. They just have a fabulous range of colors. They have a lot of yellows, they have some beautiful greens, they have a very large selection of blues, they've got probably the biggest selection of purples. The pinks are kind of a little murky, but that's because a lot of people do portraits with them. Prismacolor has 3 colors of gray. They've got warm grays, cool grays, and then French grays. I love the French grays. I wish Copic would make a French gray. They don't. They got 4 grays. I only use 2 of them. But they've got a great big selection of browns, good selection of warm reds, cool reds. It's everything that you need there, all at a pretty good price. So I recommend that you learn on Prismacolor. I used Prismacolor professionally for a good 20 years before I started branching off. I'm a soft pencil girl, so I don't like the harder sets of pencils. I think Prismacolor are great for beginners. And here's the other thing. Okay, they're not light fast. I know, and you get that in your head that you want something that's going to last 100 years. But ask yourself, what are you coloring? Because you're probably coloring exercises. You're coloring a daffodil that's going to maybe turn out okay, but it's going to take you 3 or 4 tries to get it to look the way you want it to look, and then somebody's going to throw it away 10 years from now. So paying extra for the light fast pencils just doesn't make a lot of sense to me when you're experimenting and learning and growing. Prismacolor, I will tell you, they do have some quality control issues. When you buy those pencils, I want you to look at the ends and make sure that the leads are well centered. And if your Prismacolor splits open, it's because they didn't glue it properly at the factory, and then I want you to walk it right back to the store where you bought it from, because that shouldn't be happening, and you should be able to return it. But these are great pigments. They have a wonderful range of translucents and opaques. Great to work with. And I'm not sponsored by Prismacolor, it's just what I teach with, because I feel really strongly about the fact that you should have art supplies that are accessible to you, both financially and usability, and these guys are just so usable. So I'm probably going to have these purples out when we're coloring next week. That doesn't mean that you have to rush out and buy these definite purples. You can watch how I use them and come up with some other colors. All those years of experience here are telling me that I also need to be pulling out a color that's kind of butterscotchy. So by butterscotchy, I mean, I'm going to pull out my yellows here, and I want something that's kind of ambery, yellow ochre. What is this? 942. This is going to be really good. So yellow ochre 942. Look at how much that matches the color that we created. I love it when that happens. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so this one is yellow ochre, and it is number 942. And if you're going to purchase these, I think they're all worth the purchase. I use all of them regularly. If there was a color on here that I only use once a year, I would tell you, because again, I don't want you to invest. I want you to invest your money where you need the money to go, which is on those markers. I don't want you to waste the money on colors that you're only going to use once in a while. So just want to make sure that we're all getting as many art supplies as we can. The other thing that I tend to use for flowers, and I'm not seeing it in the photo reference, is some greens. So I know we've got that shady green, and I'm probably going to use from the background this kind of kelp color, because I use this a lot. It's kelp. So there's kelp, and it is 1090. But that's from the background. The thing that is not in the photo reference, which I almost always include, is that where a petal connects to the stem, there's almost always some green chlorophyll from the stem that leaks up into the petal. So I'm going to be coming out with lime peel, and I use that pencil so much that it's not even in my kit here. I need to stand up over here for a second and find my lime peel pencil, because I use it. It's just a really good leafy green. Here we go, lime peel. Look at how short that pencil is. Yep, I use it all the time. And this is going to simulate that green chlorophyll that kind of comes up from the stem and kind of tints the base of the petals. I'll try and find a photo of that for you. So that's lime peel, and I don't have the numbers memorized. 1005. Those are probably the pencils that are going to be in my arsenal. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be base coating with those yellows, and then I'm going to be putting colors like lime peel over the top of them to start to develop the colors that you're seeing there in the daffodil. And you can kind of see that lime peel. Look where the petals connect to the trumpet. Look at how there's a little bit of green in there. It just, love it, love it, love it. All right, folks. Let me look over there on the side there. I so appreciate everybody who showed up for the live stream there. Happy to see that people are sharing apps that'll help you diagnose that color. Now, I do want to warn you, on those apps, there are a couple of them that they will specifically recommend a Prismacolor pencil, or you can set them to tell you what polychromos pencil to use or what Copic to use. I don't trust it. Use the app to visualize the color exactly as I was doing with Illustrator. So exactly how I was doing there. Just look at the color that it's sampling. Don't pay attention to the color that it's recommending, because 9 times out of 10, I look at the color that it's recommending. I can pull that color out and look at it, and I'm like, in a million years, I would never use that color. I don't see that color. I have no idea why it's suggesting the color. So I don't think that they're all that accurate at this point. It's much better to go with the colors that you can see rather than trusting a computer to tell you what color is there. So if it's suggesting a particular color, kind of look at what pencil that is, but don't assume that it's automatically right and you're wrong. Trust your eyes. Your eyes work. They get you through the day just fine. So trust them. Start trusting your instincts. When you see a color and it doesn't look right, trust your instincts. I think that's the biggest thing about beginners and people who have learned for years by following a step-by-step tutorial. People who have colored for 4 years, but they always color along with somebody. The biggest thing that you're missing is just the confidence to trust yourself to say, that doesn't look right. I'm going to try something else. You're gathering years of experience, so start to use it because you're smarter about color than you think you are. Reading through some of these comments, Beverly says yellow is a challenge, even in decorating our homes. There we go. And I totally agree. I love the color yellow. I have never painted a yellow room because it just scares me to death. The idea of getting into a room, and part of that is growing up, my mother painted the kitchen yellow and it was like a Y06. It was fluorescent and it kind of had a vibration to it. So I've never done it. It's such a challenge. Oh, I see Nancy Sheets here. Hello. I don't want this to sound like romper room, though. I always hate calling people out because I see Timmy and Tommy, and just scanning through the comments here, looking for questions. I do have a Facebook group that we can discuss, or you can leave questions on the video here. Oop, yep, I had that no sound problem. I think I'm going to see if I can clip that out for the final video. Lynette says, thank you so much for doing this. Will it be weekly or monthly live? Also, will it always be this time on Friday at 1? Thank you. This is a great question. I was really shooting to do a Wednesday live stream. I just didn't have the packet together in time. I was working on that color wheel is what was slowing me down. So I think Wednesday would actually be a better time. 1 o'clock seems to work best for a lot of the students that I've talked to. I start a Saturday live stream usually at 11 a.m. That's for advanced students, and it's even a little bit early for some of those students. Weekends and evenings are really tough for me. So I think if everybody likes Fridays, we can do it on Fridays. What I plan to do is 2 videos per month. So that first one is swatching, and then the second one is the coloring. And the first one will be live, so you can ask questions. When we do the coloring one, because of how I color, it's going to have to be recorded. I'm going to have to edit out some of the long, boring parts, because I never trust somebody coloring live on YouTube or in a class. When you're in the zone, you should be moving into an area where you're in a non-verbal kind of zone. That when you're not thinking in words anymore and you're just thinking color and stroke and texture, that's when you're doing your best work. So it's really hard for me, even in the advanced class, to color and talk to the audience at the same time. And I warn them, I'm kind of getting into this, folks. I'm going to go a little bit quiet for a while. And I just don't know that the YouTube audience wants to sit there and watch me color in silence or saying stupid things. So we'll probably edit the second one. But we'll have 2 videos a month, 2 for March, 2 for April, 2 for May, and we'll just kind of see how that's going and go from there. But 1 live, 1 recorded. Elena seems to like the time. I do too. This has kind of worked out pretty well. All right, so let's see. Oh, Elena's walking people through things in the comments. She's one of the moderators over on the Vanilla Chat. Facebook group. Nancy is suggesting, here we go, for people watching, GIMP is a free download. It's used for photo editing and it's comparable to Photoshop, and it has an eyedropper tool. So that is a good one. I think GIMP is, I've only seen it on my actual computer though. I don't think it's a phone app. I do have one on my app though, or on my phone though. Let me look and see what that one's called. I don't use it, so it's probably buried here. Oh, it's called Color Picker for Artists. I don't remember if I paid for this or not, but it's called Color Picker for Artists. And this is one of those that gives you a definite suggestion. Remember, we're just using the eyedropper tool. This one tells you some crazy colors that I would never use, but it's a pretty good one, I think, just for the eyedropper tool there. Lynette, let's see, Lynette says, I love Prismacolors. I hope they replace the lavender and lilac sooner than later. Yes, the lilac and lavender, those were discontinued, right? And I think they were discontinued because they're not light fast. They're really super not light fast. I've got Prismacolors going back so many years that I've got colors here that have the wrong names on them now, and I've got colors that are no longer in production, and I'm going to be really sad when I go to replace them because I'm going to be like, where'd they go? I don't keep up on the news on that. All right, let's see. Do I still work with Holbein? So Lynette is also asking, do I love the Holbeins as well? Yes, I have been working exclusively with Holbeins on freelance projects and my advanced class. I've just been submersing myself in Holbein color world so that I learn that product really, really well. I love it because, like I said, I'm a soft pencil girl, and Holbeins are just so buttery smooth. They're exactly the kind, I love them more than Prismacolor, and I thought it was going to take a long time to find something that I liked better than Prismacolor. I work a lot with the Holbein now for my advanced stuff. I own and love Luminance. I really like those pencils. They just don't have a large enough color palette for me to work with just Luminance specifically. And I've actually combined my Luminance with the Derwent Lightfast, so I've got all of those together, and I tried doing something a couple weeks ago, and I couldn't find the green that I wanted, so I was finding from another brand. And it makes it really hard to teach that way because suddenly Amy's using 14 different brands on the supply list. So I try and stay in one lane so that when we have a class, it's all Prismacolor or it's all Holbein. But yes, Holbein are my dream pencils. I just wish I knew how light fast they were, but I don't sell original art, so the whole light fast thing, I feel like it doesn't even apply to me because my work is always being scanned and then put into publications or books or whatever. So yeah, the light fast doesn't matter because I don't sell the originals. Amy says, this was super helpful. Thank you for such an in-depth color analysis. I rock. Hooray, thank you. I'm glad that this works. I always worry that when I do these kind of talking off the top of my head stuff, that I tell you too much, which I always do, or that I tell you things that you don't really need to know. Anne says, yellow is such a happy color, and it really is. I love it. I should decorate with it more. I really should. Linda says that this is 6 p.m. in my time zone. Works. Yep. Okay. I always worry because I have a lot of students in the Netherlands, and yeah, when I run something at 11 o'clock in the morning, they're sleeping. Cheryl says, this has been so helpful, thank you, but it's 6 a.m. in New Zealand. Oh, but there is the recording, and the recording will be kept there. Yay, it'll be there available. You can watch it again if you find it worth it. You definitely will want to watch the coloring one a couple of times because I color fast. I'll warn you about that. Ooh, Shadow says, my kitchen is actually going to be a vintage yellow theme. Yellow is awesome for kitchens. It's happy. Just don't find the Y06 and do not paint your walls Y06 because I can tell you from experience, you get nauseous after a while. That color just vibrates. All right, so let's see. We have been live streaming for quite a while. I don't even see my timer here. I am so new to YouTube. This is the first time I've ever live streamed to YouTube, so I am really happy that I didn't blow anything up too badly. All right, so we're going to cut it off here, and I will see you back here again next week. I'm not sure of the release date. I've got to edit that. I got to film it and then edit it down, but I'm kind of shooting for Wednesday of next week. It will be sometime next week. I don't want to leave too much time there. And I think what I'm going to do is when the video is playing for the very first time, I'm going to hang out over on the chat board and watch it with you and answer questions live as the video is playing. I think there's like a little premiere feature. I need to research that before I tell y'all to be there, but I'm going to answer questions while it's playing for the first time in the comment section below the video. So that'll be fun. That way I can answer your questions properly instead of trying to color and think about what I'm doing and plan what I need to do and watching the screen and then trying to answer your questions. So yay! All right. So happy to see you. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you for watching the video if you're watching this in the replay. I will see you again next week coloring. Okay,